Hey everyone, and welcome back to another section in this course. In this section, I'll be focusing on the various risks that are associated with creating a business and how to evaluate and overcome these risks throughout a company's course. In this video, I'll be specifically talking about what are business risks, factors that influence risks, and the main types of risks. So let's get started with this section. So what is risk when we talk about it from a business perspective? Risk is any potential threat or liability that opens up which can stop a business from accomplishing its primary goals. Risks can often have significant negative consequences for a company, such as a major loss in profit or even bankruptcy. So it's crucial that an entrepreneur considers the various risks that they might face when starting a new business. However, even after a business begins, there will always be a large probability for risk as they grow. So businesses must evaluate risk regularly. Risk can be both internal and external. This means can be the result of actions made within the company, or it can be the results of decisions made by some third party. And lastly, no company can completely avoid risks, but there are a lot of different actions they can take to reduce and mitigate risk if and when it occurs. So there are a couple main factors which are used to influence business risk. The first factor is a change in consumer tastes and preferences. This can be mostly tied to changes in trends over time, and especially with such a large use of social media today, trends are constantly coming and going, which means our preferences are also fluctuating a lot. A really good example of this is fidget spinners. A couple years ago, fidget spinners were a really big thing, and so most people tried to buy one. But when the trade started to fade away, the fidget spinner industry faced the risk of a change in consumer trends, and they didn't really do anything to avoid this risk, which is why fidget spinners aren't that common now. The second factor is decisions that are made by a company's competitors. So one day your competitor can make a really big business decision, which will end up harming your own business and increase risk. And that's why it's important to monitor the decisions made by your competitors and be ready to adapt if your customers start deserting you to go to a competitor. The third factor is economic and market conditions. This can often be one of the hardest to expect, but it means being prepared for changes in the economic climate, like recessions or similar periods of economic turmoil. One recent example of this situation is with the COVID-19 pandemic, which a lot of businesses weren't really prepared for. So it led to an unexpected economic recession and a lot of businesses shutting down. And this is a major risk. And that's why it's really important that you are monitoring economic and market conditions as you run your business. And the last factor that influences business risk is government regulations. I'll talk more about this later, but it's important that your business is complying with the law or new laws to avoid facing fines, lawsuits, and other potential liabilities. And that's why entrepreneurs often monitor changes in regulations as they run their business. And next up, I'm going to talk about the primary main risks that are often associated with running a business. So the first main type of risk is strategic risk, which occurs when a business's main strategy becomes less effective over time, which can lead to declines in a company's profit and less customers going to the business. Strategic risk is often the result of changes in technology, newer competitors, changes in demand from customers, or even a change in the cost of supplies. And this risk is often the easiest to avoid because it's not that difficult for a business to adapt over time. But if a business fails to overcome that risk, it can signal the end of that business. One example of strategic risk is Kodak, which is one of the most powerful companies in the photography industry. But one of its employees created a digital camera, they killed the idea because they saw it as a threat. And then soon enough, a ton of other companies began creating and selling digital cameras, and Kodak's business took a significant hit because they failed to adopt to technological changes. So, like I said before, it's easy to avoid this type of risk, but it can be hard to overcome. And the next type of risk is compliance risk. Compliance risk occurs when a business doesn't comply with government laws and regulations. This is usually a big problem in very highly regulated markets, like the food and agriculture industry, but this can become an issue for any business with simple guidelines like employee protections in a workplace. Usually, compliance risk will also lead to more financial risk, like fines or even major lawsuits, if your business isn't following the law. Another major type of business risk is operational risk. Operational risk occurs whenever there's a big sudden change in a business's day to day operations. And compared to the strategic and compliance risks, they're usually unexpected and unavoidable, but also not very common. And operational risk is often the result of two main causes: human error or natural events. Either an employee can make a mistake in the company's everyday operations, or there can be some big external event, like the COVID-19 example, that causes a change in the company's activities. An example of a natural event risk would be if a storm cuts off power and leads to slower distribution, while an example of a human error risk would be if an employee accidentally gives out a check for $50,000 instead of $5,000. The fourth type of risk is financial risk, which is when there's a major financial problem that occurs, which leads to an increase in everyday costs and a big decline in revenue. Typically, financial risk is an effect of the other types of risks because most risks will have a clear financial effect on a company's actions. But other than the risk, there are two main causes of financial risk. The first is liquidity risk, which is when a business does not have the money to pay back debts to creditors. And the other type is interest rate risk, which is when a change in interest rates leads to a business paying more money than expected, and that can cause a steep decline in revenue. And the last type of risk I'll talk about today is reputational risk. Reputational risk occurs when there's some sort of internal or external event that causes major damage to a company's reputation. So if this occurs, it can lead to immediate loss in revenue and a loss of customers, and will also harm brand loyalty and lead to less customers returning back to your business. This is becoming increasingly common today with social media, since it's easier than ever before to leave reviews and criticism or judge someone's business. Examples of factors that can cause this risk is if there's a lawsuit that harms a company's reputation, a scandal, a product recall, or just any bad reviews. And that covers all the different types of risk associated with running a business. And in the next video, I'll be talking about how to assess risk for your specific business. Thanks for watching.